One thing that has always mystified many Pokemon Go players in the Great League is the mystery of Mew. Which moveset to run on Mew? Is Mew even good in the Great League? Well, in this video, I'm going to be taking you through my buddy Jacob's regional Silph Cup victory, showcasing the mighty Mew. As far as Mew is concerned in the Voyager Cup meta, it's kind of a apex predator in a way. And for you GBL only people out there, the Voyager Cup is basically the same thing as Open Great League, except with the Silph kind of twist on it, and very light restrictions. To digress, Mew in this format is kind of an apex predator in a way, using the Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, Wild Charge moveset. With the Dragon Claw, you have that lovely bait move, and Mew can just straight up beat Altaria. Straight Dragon Claw. Doesn't even have to think about it. And then with the Wild Charge, you get Skarmory, you get Azumarill, you get Registeel, and with the combination, you even get Deoxys Defense Form. That's the big four right there, plus their little brother Skarmory, just destroyed by Mew. Then in reference to the Voyager Cup in particular, you have Hypno, Melmetal, and Toxicroak as also being big players that are defeated by Mew. And this particular Mew moveset, of course. This Mew is so dang deadly that even if you know what moveset it is, like you know in your heart and soul, you fought this person before, you have prior knowledge from your previous battle with them, it's still very difficult to overcome it. If you try to build a team around the idea of Mew being on your opponent's team, you could be leaving yourself open to other threats. And Mew being a threat, yes, the person that has Mew and they use it well is going to rise to the top, but the chances of even one person being in your bracket with a Mew is quite low, because of course, many of us have powered up our Mews. Then as far as the rest of Jacob's team goes, it's all pretty standard for the Voyager Cup, to be honest. Altaria, Azumarill, this is a Ice Beam Hydro Pump Azumarill, Toxicroak, Meganium, and Melmetal. One thing that is kind of spicy about the Melmetal though, is that instead of Superpower, it has Thunderbolt. The team I brought to the Voyager Cup is basically identical to Jacob's, but instead of Mew, I used Shadow Hypno with the Ice Punch and the Thunder Punch. A pretty good budget Mew, if you will. And my Melmetal has Flash Cannon instead of Thunderbolt. Slight disagreement between us on which one's the better for that spicy lotto right there, but I wasn't disappointed. He wasn't disappointed. We weren't disappointed, so. Without further ado, let's watch Jacob's sweeping victory over the Mad Go Party's regional tournament, Madison, Wisconsin. And for the sake of timeliness, I'm only going to be showing one battle from each of the fights, except for the final, where I'll show you all three fights. And before I get into this, I want to give a shout out to the staff and the host of the Mad Go Party tournament. Hosting these tournaments, especially online ones, can be very, very difficult. Handling disputes and just taking the time to put your time into all that is pretty great. So definitely appreciate you guys for the work you put in there. Our first opponent here is Nomads Omnivore. Is it an omnivore that is not mad, or is it a nomadic omnivore? I'm not exactly certain. His team is fairly standard, aside from the Machamp. I imagine he wanted to use Machamp to have that fighter type role and make use of the Gen 1 slot. For the most part, the Gen 1 slot, aside from Mew of course, is relatively weak for this cup. Now I chose to highlight this particular fight because it's the one where he actually caught the Mew lead. As far as his team's concerned, this is one of his outs to the Mew. So yeah. Probopass, and this is a Rock Throw Probopass, which is a little bit aggressive and a little bit like, you know, unexpected as far as Probopass goes. If you're going with Probopass instead of Bastiodon, you think they'd go for the speed instead of slowing it down with the Rock Throw, but Rock Throw Probopass here. And yeah, you can see highly aggressive on the Mew there, burning both of its shield and possibly taking it out, but they don't shield the second Wild Charge there. Azumarill comes in and takes it out, but now Jacob has switch advantage over them with the Meganium on the Mew, which is just insanely good. And then Altaria comes in to take down the Meganium, who is now switch locked in and can't do anything against this. Now, important thing to notice is that the opponent still has a shield advantage, so it is possible for an Ice Beam Azumarill to farm up on the Altaria and take down the Meganium. That's why before Jacob swapped out, he got some farm in against the opposing Meganium, so he wouldn't, or would lower his likelihood of being trapped in that nonsense there. And clean as can be, whips out the first Frenzy Plant. Back to back, whips out the second Frenzy Plant. Azumarill here can only watch in terror as its HP gets Vine Whipped down. Man, if this was GBL, I would have just exited at that point. Like, it's a Azumarill against Meganium. What are you going to do? Next up, we have a Severson, busting out a fairly spicy team featuring a Sableye, Cresselia, and Stunfisk. And a Severson here is the only elite trainer in this tournament, so a very formidable player all around. Now, starting out the battle, Jacob goes Mew lead into the Skarmory, and I believe these two have fought each other in the past in a previous tournament where Jacob used the Mew team, so he knew to get his Skarmory out there right quick, swapping into the Sableye to try to take it out. Fortunately, Jacob has the Azumarill in the back, so Sableye is kinda done. Ooh, look at there on its forehead. You got the best buddy Sableye there. So knowing that this Sableye doesn't have Power Gem or Return, it's very unlikely that it's going to be able to KO the Azumarill on a charge move, so Jacob just lets all the charge moves go through on it, trying to farm it down for extra energy. Unfortunately, it gets taken out, they simultaneously KO on the fast move. So the coin flip happens, Jacob sends in the Mew, winning the coin flip there as far as switch advantage is concerned. Hoping to conserve shields, Jacob swaps in the Altaria to catch that charge move and is lined up against a Cresselia. Now Cresselia is a pretty formidable Pokemon once shields are like kind of halfway down or if it catches a matchup that it really likes. But in this situation, with a Mew in the back, lined up to a Skarmory that just wasted all of its energy, a Shadow Claw Mew, nonetheless, this is a very precarious situation for the Severson here. I don't even know how you say that name, and I keep saying it over and over again. But yeah, coming in on the Sky Attack, swapping into the Mew, has a shield yet, the Skarmory's done. Jacob's next opponent here is Jojo Jojo, running a team that might look very similar to the SwagMans. Let's see how he does. Having practiced extensively with Jacob, I know that's not going to go good for him. You can see right here at the beginning, Hypno gets caught by the Mew, so that's not good. Swaps to his Meganium, Meganium being basically the only out to Mew on the entire team, and gets caught by Altaria. And many of these matches against Jojo here, I do have all the recordings, basically ended with this same kind of situation. Mew leads, Meganium comes on in, Meganium gets caught by the Altaria, GG for the most part. Doesn't feel good when you swap in a Meganium and then Altaria is waiting for you. Definitely not a good feeling at all. Yeah, Hypno comes on in, floundering. At this point, the game's basically done, but let's see what happens. Mew comes on in, shields the charge move. Is it a Shadow Ball? It is a Shadow Ball, but what is the other charge move? I guess we won't know. Toxicroak comes in on the Mew, and Mew just starts going to work with the Dragon Claws, knowing very well that Toxicroak doesn't have any real effective hit onto Mew. Swaps in the Meganium, probably to just Earthquake and secure the end game there. No finesse. Is it an Earthquake? It's an Earthquake. I mean, the guy has no shields, so probably going to be an Earthquake. And there goes the Toxicroak, and then there is the Hypno with basically no energy, trapped in with the Meganium, and there you go. Next opponent here is the GBI Kekachu. And yeah, using an Azu Reggie core team instead of an Azu Altaria core team, and because it's using the Registeel, it can free up that like tank role and use a Alolan Muck instead. Alolan Muck and Meganium being two heavy counters to the Mew here. So Jacob here catches the lead with his Mew once again. Hypno, what are you gonna do, man? Looks like Hypno is farming up some energy, maybe to throw a Shadow Ball, try to get some shield advantage going on. It is a Shadow Ball, but he's staying in there. Man, Hypno, you think you would have dipped out at any moment, but he's in for the long haul. Gets hit by the Wild Charge and then gets farmed down, and then in comes the Alolan Muck to clean up shop against the Mew. Throws Wild Charge, he lets the Wild Charge through, and this part confuses me a little bit. I bet GG Kekachu is kicking himself a little bit there, because he let the second Wild Charge through. Meaning that his like one real out to Mew, aside from Meganium, he just let it rip right through him, which is what you're not supposed to do, especially with Wild Charge being revealed there. So, man, I bet GB's kicking himself to this day there. No complaints, man. Mew is a very difficult Pokemon to deal with. But yeah, Mew just kind of ripped through two Pokemon on his team. All that's left is a non-play rough Azumarill against Azumarill, Mew, and whatever Jacob has in the back. I have it written down right here, do I? Oh no, I didn't write this one down. What does Jacob have in the back? Will we get to see it? Oh, it's an Altaria. Okay, yeah. Altaria, 1 shield, getting the Sky Attack, even with an Ice Beam. It's a done deal here. Then we have the Grand Finals. Logabibi versus Jacob, aka Verlis Wolfpack, no relation. Who will win this fight? I mean, I told you at the beginning of the video that Jacob won, but who will win? So, interesting thing with Loga's team, it looks pretty standard at first, but instead of Hypno, he's going with Haunter. Haunter is actually a pretty good meta call, especially with Mews flopping around here, and Ferrothorn instead of the Meganium. Starting out, Jacob leads in with the Mew and is caught by the Haunter. Now this matchup can go either way depending on who throws and when, so it is a relatively close matchup because they're just hurting each other so much with the Shadow Claws. Both of them opt to throw their charge moves, so they both get a shield out there. Haunter goes in for the second charge move and therefore loses the lead matchup. What comes in next is the Altaria, so he's not able to get a throw in, and now he's a fast move or two behind on his Altaria with no shields, meaning that this Altaria can just Dragon Pulse him down. And then in the end game, we have Meganium versus Altaria. We saw a couple matches back what happens when Meganium is pitted against the Altaria. Doesn't go so well for the Meganium, and here we see Jacob taking an early loss in the final battle. We go into game 2. Dude leads with Haunter yet again, so he leads with the Altaria, swaps to Azumarill to threaten that, and then gets caught by the Meganium. Now this definitely feels like some GBL action right here. Somebody swaps to Azumarill, maybe you swap to Azumarill, and there's the Meganium to punish you with no fear whatsoever. And we also get some interesting information from this battle. It is a completely lost match for the Azumarill, but Azumarill reveals that it is a play rough Azumarill, not an Ice Beam Azumarill, which is pretty important information to have. Then, in the end game, we have Altaria versus Altaria, and 2 other Pokemon. So, yeah, Altaria's not having a very good time here. Between the fast move damage and mostly the fast move damage and the fact that they're on relatively even shields there, this Altaria is definitely going down in this fight. Ooh, hot swap to the Haunter there, but shielded at the same time. Totally forgot Haunter existed. I thought that got game 1 mixed up a little bit there for me. But yeah, no, Haunter comes in. Oh yeah, this is pretty tight. He dies. Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, and there goes the battle. Then we bring in the final fight, anticipating the swap to try to counter the Altaria. Jacob leads in with the Mew, which has a relatively good matchup against the Melmetal here. Melmetal can only Rock Slide, as Mew charges up some energy, throws an attack. Is it a Wild Charge, or is it something else? He calls it, but does it matter? He throws the Wild Charge anyways. And with the damage of Wild Charge and Dragon Claw combined, yeah, Melmetal's going down there. Then in comes Haunter, throwing the Dragon Claw. Haunter's going to want to shield that, so whatever shield advantage he had is now lost. But we do have a Haunter with an energy advantage, which is quite deadly to deal with. Anticipating the Shadow Ball, Jacob shields it. Altaria does not fear anything there. And then their Altaria getting trapped now against the Azumarill. I don't know, I think this might be lights out for Logabibi. But the fight does end up being a little bit more intense here. So Azumarill going for the Ice Beam there. Azumarill may be super tanky against Altaria, but it can also only take so many of these Sky Attacks too, so you gotta throw that Ice Beam sometime. Takes it out, and it's important to note the extra farming that took place there as well. That way, Jacob would be able to for sure reach the second Ice Beam to get the shield from the Haunter, instead of getting, Shadow Punch down like a chump. And then here, they try to go down for the farm down, and it's not quite enough to get both the Shadow Punch and the Shadow Ball in, so Logabibi ends up taking the L. While that didn't look super close from the outset there, it definitely did end up being a closer fight than you'd think, because Haunter is just that tricky of a Pokemon. And with that, Jacob takes the regional championship and gets his international invite. Will Jacob win internationals? That is yet to be seen, but I've got some pretty good hopes for the kid here. He's been with me since day one of my Silph Arena days. If you're not familiar, I didn't participate in Season 1 because of work and school. It just was not in the cards for me. But Season 2, hit the ground running, and Jacob was with me there all the way, helping me out with all sorts of loopy trades, because if you don't know, SwagMan doesn't have a lot of time to play this game, and he needs some very specific IVs and very specific Pokemon to perform well in the Silph Arena. So thank you, Jacob, for all the help that you've given me, and I've got high hopes for you when it comes to the international tournament. I think you can take it, man. And to review, when it comes to the Mew, yeah, Mew is definitely an all-powerful Apex Predator type Pokemon when it comes to the Great League. When it comes to GBL, it's a Pokemon that I think can work like all the time as a lead, because even if you aren't using the patented Dragon Claw Wild Charge moveset, you could be running something else. And if your opponent anticipates one thing and you start throwing the other thing, then that can definitely throw them off. It does open up an interesting door of controversy for Pokemon Go PvP, and that is some players have it, some players don't. And when I say they don't, I mean they already powered it up over 1500 CP. The result of which is that they can't use Mew, and Mew being this mystery box Apex Predator type Pokemon, a Pokemon that's phenomenally good and difficult to manage even if you know what the exact moveset on it is. You have the haves, and then you have the have-nots. Jacob himself was actually kind of astonished that they didn't ban Mew from the Voyager Cup format, given how predatory it was to the majority of the meta, and once again, the lack of access. All this wrapped up with a Wild Charge buff off in the horizon there, presumably making Mew even more powerful. The question becomes, should Pokemon Go give us debuffing items, or possibly even give us another Mew, just to give us access to Mew, us have-nots there, us they who have powered up beyond the 1500, a chance to utilize the Mew. Let me know in the comments what you think on all this, and if you're already a Mew user, what spicy moveset are you going with? Or is Wild Charge Dragon Claw it? If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you like this content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you're not supporting the SwagMan on Patreon, well, maybe you should.